Hi, everybody. It's Book of Catherine. Welcome back to the Lost Laws of the Lord, Part 3. And today we're going to be doing something that I have avoided for my entire life, and that is talk about numbers. And I wouldn't talk about numbers with you unless they were the Lord's language, quite frankly, and a way for you to hear from Him directly, no matter what language you speak and no matter what faith that you are. These numbers kind of unlock the universe. That's why Nikola Tesla said, if you know the numbers 3, 6, and 9, they're literally the key to the entire universe. So he said that back in the 1800s. And that's true. The number 3, 6, and 9 definitely dominates the laws of our universe. For a short example, is the sun is 93 million miles away from us. So little things like that. It's also involved in the distance between the sun and the moon and their relation to us. Just 3, 6, and 9 are everywhere. But there's one number that you also need to know, and that's the number 7, as you've learned with the Jubilee laws from Leviticus 25. So I'm going to make this short and sweet if I can, but I want to give you an example of, I'm not going to give you like everything with numbers or numerology at all. I'm going to give you the basic alphabet that has helped me and that can help you, that anyone can understand, even school children. If you're young and you're a child, you're going to understand this. This is very, very basic. So the only numbers you really need to know are 3, 6, 9, 7, and 12. Those are really the only ones. But the most important ones, like your ABCs, are 3, 6, and 9, just like Nikola Tesla said. And the reason for that is that you can you can hear from the divine almost instantaneously, and it will help your research. Like, for perfect example, so they've done studies on the Nobel Peace Prize, and it's overwhelmingly Jewish winners that win the Nobel Prize, right? By the way, fun fact, the Nobel Prize, the man who founded the Nobel Prize, Nobel, he actually created explosives, which is pretty interesting. It's the Nobel Peace Prize, founded by the guy who actually created explosives. So the whole prize and the whole thing is really funded by war and explosions and tearing apart everything. Very interesting when you think about it. Anyway, but the reason that is that Judaism actually teaches the importance of numbers as well. They teach the Jubilees, the law of the Jubilees, that's in Leviticus 25. And so they know that, okay, on the 6th year, all of the plants are going to go dead. Everything's going to go into kind of a rest phase, and they prepare for that. And then every 50th year, they know there's going to be another interesting phase. And then there's going to be 6-year cycles of like good and building crops, which is a huge key to the universe. And also, they have the most books of the ancients. And when they have those books about how things were created, their research changes. They have huge advantages to research. So, and a lot, like I was telling a friend, like, I'm Catholic. I don't know. Let me give you sorry. I'm trying to tape this a few times. I'm having trouble taping it. But this is a perfect story as an example. I was raised Catholic, right? I'm no longer in or with the Catholic Church. I was raised in it, and I married outside of it. And when I went to college, I'll never forget going into a certain class and taking a certain class. I was an English literature major, and there was one class on like the medieval literature, some type of period of history. I don't even remember what it was, but it was required for the major. And I almost felt like I shouldn't go back to the class. It was a huge learning experience for me because everyone there didn't know the things that I learned from Catholicism. In Catholic school, just as being a Catholic, I didn't even go to Catholic school. I was just raised Catholic. I went to a public school. And I remember learning throughout all my research, I remember learning that, well, not only was I as a Catholic kid sent to a thing called CCD, it might not be called CCD anymore, but it's kind of a separate school, like an after school program to teach you about the religion and the faith and kind of indoctrinate you. And so there are like certain stories of the Bible that I know my husband experienced it, and I think He's not Mormon. I think he's Seventh-day Adventist. He was raised. And so he actually knows way more than I do. And I'm surprised. I'll do my research and I'll be like, oh my gosh, did you know this? He's like, I thought everyone knew that. When you're a child, my point is, when you're a child raised in the faith, you don't realize that everybody doesn't know it. You're a child. You don't realize that the kid sitting next to you is learning something totally different. You don't think about writing about it online. You don't think about posting about it. It's just so into your DNA that you don't realize how different you are from how different your education was for the people around you. So when I went into this class at UCLA, I'll never forget like the teacher's assistant saying, now who knows what the Eucharist is? And I was like, sure, everybody knows what why is that even a question? And then I realized people were like, Eucharist, how do you say Eucharist? And I finally raised my hand. I was like, I know what a Eucharist is. Like, do you really not know it? And she's like, go ahead and explain it. And I was like, well, it's the wafer that you eat. And like when the priest gets up there, they say that they turn this piece of bread into a wafer into the actual body of Christ. And I'll never forget the students around me had this look of like mixed of horror and awe and confusion when I was describing the Eucharist. To me, the Eucharist is as normal as a shoebox. It's as normal as, a pair of flip-flops or sandals. That's how normal the Eucharist is to me. So it's the same thing for the Jubilees. My friends who are Jewish, they didn't even know to talk about the Jubilees. They were just kind of like, well, everyone knows that. And I'm like, no, everyone does not know that. Just like they don't know what the Eucharist is, I don't know what the Jubilees are. And I had to learn what it is. But it is a huge key to the universe that you need to know, where eras don't go in decades. That's actually a lie. We know that there are eras, and they tell us, the news media tells us that it's in decades, and it's not. The eras are actually written in sets of 7. So there's like the iPhone era that started in 2007, and the Antifa era that was 2014. Also the Storm era in 2014. Like that's when things really kicked up in 2014. In 2000, that was the era of war and financial disasters. And that was a result of because of what we did in the previous era from 1993 to 1999. We opened up the whole world, like let down their trading and said we don't care about the human rights behind it, which unleashed slavery. So of course, after 7 years of slavery becoming a part of our normal everyday trading lives and everything becoming cheaper and dollar stores cropping up because now slavery was legal in across the globe, which, is basically global socialism. Of course, 2000, that era would have brought war into our lives. Of course, that's unveiled. Of course, we lost the World Trade Center, fell, and all 7 buildings fell down. Not an accident that 7 buildings fell down at, number 30. That was the address at 30. So, okay, I'm talking as if you understand the numbers. So let me give you what the basic numbers are, this alphabet, this 3, 6, and 9. So the number 3 stands for the Holy Trinity. That's the Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. So if you read into the text of, say, the Torah, which of course is not the basic text, when you see the Dead Sea Scrolls, the basic texts are, the first one is Enoch. There are more Enoch copies in the Dead Sea Scrolls than any other manuscript. I believe Genesis is in there, but the one that's there more is the Book of the Cave of Treasures. That's the original Genesis. Way more detail in it. I encourage you to read the Legends of the Jews. Not all of it's true. You can kind of see where it's gotten in there and mixed it up. The Apocrypha unleashes a ton, but it's difficult because a lot of it's been messed with. So you kind of have to find your way through it. But all the women are the Apocrypha. Like there's a ton of women in the Lord's text, and they've all been cut out. And that's a whole other video and a whole other story. So, okay, so numbers. So in Genesis and in these things, when the Lord comes down to take a look at Sodom and Gomorrah, there's Abraham at the side of the road. And Abraham is saying, Lord, don't go down there. But he said that there are 3 figures that were there that he stopped. He didn't stop one man. The Lord was like, we want to go down there and see how evil it really is for ourselves. And Abraham begged for the saving, and I'm like, I really don't want to do that today. Like, I really don't want to. I see that as a mistake because all the innocents were being hurt. That's what the Lord said. But anyway, the Lord's always saying us and we. Look at Isaiah 6. He's like, who will speak for us? So there's three. God is in three persons. So the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. So Jesus, when he ascended into heaven and rules from heaven. But he said, I'll send you a helper. I'll send you the Lord of Spirits. I'll send you the Holy Ghost, just like the book of Enoch said would happen. And that's what reigns across the world today is the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit does quite a bit of work, but it allows us, it's kind of like a telephone line that you can get onto and talk with the Father on and talk with, Jesus and the Father. It's very, very helpful and powerful. So that's why the number 3 is such a big deal. Like when you see the number 3, pay attention. For example, I just saw a rainbow meteorite. Someone posted a fireball that happened over Sakurajima. Oh, that's really hard for me to say with my FND, my functional neurological disorder. I write it all the time. I write this word all the time, but I'm like, I don't know if I've ever said it. Sakurajima. Oh, that hurt. But I said it. The volcano over there in Japan. I'm going to take a while to recover from that. So, the volcano over there in Japan, there's a big fireball that went over it. And the text just said, oh, it was March 2021. And I was like, well, a lot happened in 2021 at the beginning. That's when I found out that everything, all the earthquakes had multiplied by a factor of like 2,000 all across the world, was in that first, January, the first week of January of 2021 is when I found out that things were going dramatically off the rail. COVID hit it, but right when COVID hit, a lot of other things hit too. Like the same week that COVID hit, massive earthquakes hit all around the world as well. And they haven't stopped. They just continue to grow. And I was unaware of that. Like my whole world was open up. So when it said March 2021, I was like, that was a big time. A lot happened. Let me see what happened over there. And I was like, oh, because it didn't say what volcano was over. It just showed a mountain. It was like, oh, what a pretty fireball. And look, it's rainbow. And I'm like, well, if the fireball is rainbow, those are the colors. It says that in the book of Isaiah and the book of Ezekiel, it says that there's a giant rainbow over the Lord's throne. So when you see a rainbow, definitely pay attention to it. There's some kind of a sign there, directly from the Father. And that's why light, when the sun started changing in September of 2021, all these rainbows started going. I can tell if something's been filmed before or after September 2021 because the light is so much different from the sun. It's changed so dramatically. And just now, last week, it hit 7 times brighter, which fulfills Enoch. It fulfills Enoch 91 verse 16. So we are literally at the end of the 7,000 years. Like there are no other prophecies to be fulfilled. Like that has closed. That door closed when it hit 7 times brighter. So I believe you can talk to Neil deGrasse Tyson about that. I think he's watching that. Some other scientists definitely around the world are, but he has the most data. He's more accessible to the public than other scientists are that are watching the sun as well. So anyway, because luminosity is really hard to track with the sun. I'm going all over the place. So the number 3 in the book of Isaiah is just the number 3 period is huge. It's very, very important. And it can lead you places if you see an abundance of it. And that's why I decided to look at this rainbow comet. I knew it was a big year, but I was like, okay, I looked it up. I found the original post. And sure enough, it was like, this happened on March. And I was like, that's the 3rd month of 2021. And I was like, okay, that's a big deal that it happened in March because that's the 3rd month. And a lot of stuff went down in that month. So I looked it up, I Googled it, and it turned out, no, not just was it in March, which is the 3rd month of the calendar year we follow, but it was the 3rd day. It happened on the 3rd day of the 3rd month on the Gregorian calendar that's, ends in 21. And I'm like, okay, that was a really big sign. And I was like, didn't fireballs happen over Popocatépetl, El Popo down in Mexico? And I looked it up in January 3rd. 3 fireballs went over that volcano. And now both volcanoes are erupting constantly at like 20,000 foot intervals. Sakurajima has had pyroclastic flows. It's throwing huge llama bombs. And I believe both of them have like a 12-mile radius of evacuation. And their communities are on ash alerts, which is why I say, like, watch for fireballs. I never said that before I knew about numbers and before I started watching numbers, to watch for fireballs. Like the UK, Britain, let's see what day is today. I don't know what day today is. I don't live on calendars like other people. I live on a different kind of calendar day. I think that's right, January 12th. I'm always thinking about other calendars of history, but I'm still trying to learn how to figure out what day I'm on. That requires a different part of my brain. So that's not memory. That's harder. So I think it's January 12th right now. And I forgot my train of thought, but I'm not surprised that I'm doing it on the 12th. He always does that. I post something and then it's like at 12:09, which is holy numbers. So the reason they're called holy numbers, 3, 6, 9, 12, the reason they're called holy numbers is because he writes in that language. They're all kind of factors of 3. So 3 is his deity. There's the number 3. And if you see it, I encourage you to go look into it and see if there are more 3s involved, or 6s, or 9s, or 7. And I'll give you how to translate that later. But just keep in mind, like, if you look here on my screen right here, this is how I learned about it all, is that I saw that Croatia, it was the first week of January of 2021, and I found out that Croatia had a 6.3 earthquake that killed 7. And I was like, 3, 6, and 7. That's 3 holy numbers, because the basic holy numbers are 3, 6, 9, 7, and 12. So 3, 6, 9, 7, and 12. And here they are. There's 3 of them in one headline. And I went looking into it, and oh my gosh, I found out so much. Like, that's when I found out that the earthquakes were really big. But the only reason I even knew to look into it was because of this. And I was like, okay, there's a lot of holy numbers. I went to go follow it, and I uncovered that, oh, there was actually a giant earthquake in March of that year, and it hit right with COVID, and they'd been waiting for it for 140 years, which is another holy number because it's 7 times 2. Anytime these numbers multiply, like the reason 3, 6, and 9 are the basic is because 3 plus 3 equals 6. Like 3 times 3 equals 6. Or sorry, 3 times 2 equals 6. 3 times 3 equals 9. 3 times 4 equals 12. And so when you have God multiplying into these other areas, those become holy numbers as well. Almost every number that's divisible by 3 can be seen as a holy number. And you'd be surprised at how often he actually does that. So anyway, so back to the laws of the Lord. I'm going to blow your mind here in a second when you know what they all are. So 3 means the Lord, it means God. And 6 means man, because we were created on the 6th day. So that means humans or humankinds or mankind. And honestly, it often means evil, because mankind is half death and half the Lord's child. So we're half of death's child and half the Lord's child. And we tend to lead towards half of death. Like, we really choose that way more often than you think, than we choose life. You'd be surprised. Then 9 is 3 times 3. 9 is completion because of 3 times 3. That means finality, completion, the Lord's plan coming together, the finishing. So that's why we're seeing a lot of 9s nowadays, because we're at the end of that 7,000 years. I remember back in January of 2021, there weren't a lot of 9s. Like you just saw it here. Like 3, 6, and 7. I was seeing a lot more 3s and 6s. I was seeing a ton of 7s. Like 3 times 7 is 21. So we are entering into the year 21. Things were landing on 12. I was almost never seeing 9 until just the end of last year. I started seeing so many 9s at, like, when Tonga went off. And I was like, oh, I paid attention to it differently because it translates differently. Okay, so what does the number 7 mean? So 7 means creation, because the Lord created the earth and the worlds and the heavens in 7 days. All the water, all the sea, everything you see, he created it in seven days. Now that could be 7,000 years. It could be 7 billion years. It could be 14 billion years. Like, a day is just a section. It's just kind of like a cubicle off on the side. It's a unit of measure, and it can be anything, kind of like saying an inch, give an inch or take an inch. We use inch in a lot more things than we mean this actual inch of this measure. Inch we just know as, you can use it in many more things than the actual, exact number of 3 quarters of an inch plus a quarter of an inch equals exactly this many. I can't remember what makes up an inch, but you know what I mean. It's just like saying a parcel of something. A day is like saying a parcel. Like, and each thing, what he's saying is that everything I create on the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth day, even the seventh day, everything I did took the exact same amount of times. Like the first day was not longer than the third day. All of the days were exactly the same. So whatever unit of time in our language, in our reality, in our eternity, the way our timeline works, he did it in 7 parcels and they were all even, but it's not in the actual 24-hour period that we think. So anyway, 7 is used everywhere because of creation, like the Jubilees. The Lord says that heaven actually beats to the drum of 7. 7 like kind of rules the way the kingdom of heaven, the Lord's kingdom, actually, works and drives to the beat. He says, just like heaven, so on earth. I want you to keep the Jubilees because that's how things go in heaven. So we know that heaven, whatever fountains are there, whatever water is there, whatever tides are there, whatever is up in heaven, whatever trees, they even grow and beat and rest to the 7, the drum of 7 as well. So it means what's created. So let me go over that. 3 means the Lord. 6 means mankind, humanity, because we were created on the 6th day. 7 just means all of creation, like everything. And then 9 means completion. 3 times 3, that's 9. That means finality, the conclusion of whatever he's created. And then 7 means creation. Now, what does 12 mean? So 12 is this additional thing that he started to use a lot more often. And that's 3, which is the Lord, times 4, the 4 corners. 4 generally means the 4 corners. So that's why sometimes I hesitate using the term holy numbers, because all the numbers are his numbers. All the numbers are his. He created every number that exists. So they're all his numbers. They're all technically holy numbers. But there's the language that he speaks to, the basic alphabet. The words he uses the most are 3, 6, 9, 7, and 12. So I would just say between 0 and 10, most often 3, 6, 9, and 7. And so, just like Tesla said, 3, 6, and 9 unlock the universe. And then if he had added 7, which I think he just did I think he completely knew about the 7. I think he just wanted to protect his patents, quite frankly. Smart thing to do. Then when you see an abundance of those basic numbers, 3, 6, 9, and 7, then you know to like go follow it, or the Lord's speaking to you, or the Lord did it, or there's something maybe not the fallen angels did it, perhaps his angels. Remember, the fallen angels are only 1/3. They're the minority. They're like Slytherin. Remember, the angels who obey the Lord, they are the majority. So sometimes it may mean that the angels did it, or that the Lord's justice. Now you can translate it knowing those meanings, knowing that like 3 means the Lord, 6 means mankind, 7 means all of creation, 9 means the Lord's completion. So like I didn't know that at this time, that what this was saying is Croatia's big earthquake, which created like so much damage I can't even tell you. Like 7, I don't believe a ton of people died in the first earthquake in March of 2020. When COVID hit, they had a 140-year earthquake. It was like a 5.3, which is huge for a city that doesn't have like modern architecture. All of its buildings were built in like the millennium of Christ, really, or even earlier sometimes. So they got really hit by a 5.0. A 6.3 killed people. So I think the 5.3 did something like 24,000 buildings got hurt, I believe, hit right in that March. But this was a worse earthquake, and that's my point, is things are definitely worsening. So I just knew to go look into the story more and learn more, and I did. It unlocked all of these big things. But now, looking back at it, I know what the actual numbers mean. I know how to translate them. So I can translate this to, okay, the Lord, that's 3. The Lord, mankind for the 6, and 7 is creation. So that means, let's see if I could take a minute. Like if I put it all together, if I write it all out, a mankind and God and creation. So the Lord's plan for humanity and creation. And that doesn't mean it's completed, because there's no 9. So it doesn't mean it's the end. So it opens it up to the beginning. but it means that this is the Lord. Well, you see, he had mankind this time because the 6 is there. So it makes sense that 6. Also, something interesting, when it killed 7, I believe 6 of them were adults and 1 was a child. And like, I was like, oh, that was even divided up into another holy number, 6. So that's 2 6s. And I'm like, oh, all right, that's 6 repeated. So not only is this about creation, because obviously it's an earthquake, but it's really about the Lord and mankind. So the Lord has a beef with mankind, and that's why Croatia is doing it. So I looked into what the Lord could have. Eventually, I looked into what the Lord's beef could be with Croatia, and that's when I found out about the Diocletian and the Great Persecution. Did you know there was a Diocletian persecution where he divided the kingdom up into 4 sections and 4 leaders, and they all had one job, and that was to cut the head off of every Christian they could find? I mean, that's part of the reason Northern Africa just got wiped out. So I didn't know about the Diocletian persecution. But more than that, Croatia has decided to rebuild Diocletian's palace and reenact the things that he did. Like, it's crazy. Like, they're finding new bones of sacrifice at all the pagan temples over there. Like, they go, oh, they found something that's this many thousands of years old. And I'm looking at it going, no, that's a new skeleton. Like, that's within the last 7 years. Like, those are new dead bodies. There's new sacrifices happening, which makes sense because, it's the end of times. It is expected that people will begin to, follow Slytherin, become fallen. And that's just the end. That's what it's supposed to be like. So anyway, so I wanted to give you another example of how holy numbers have helped me out and can help you out. For example, people look at the 2004 tsunami, right? I was stunned when I saw this, when I started digging into it. I saw somewhere that it said a 9.3 earthquake hit. And I was like, okay, so this isn't even a 6.3 earthquake. This is a 9.3 earthquake. That's completion, the Lord's completion. Now we're really getting into it. This was 2004 tsunami. So because it said it was a 9.3 earthquake, I was like, I didn't know that. I didn't know it was a 9.3 earthquake. Like, a lot of Japan's earthquakes are like 7.0 or 9.0. Like, the Lord has it in for Japan. From what I can tell from the Book of Enoch, it says that this whole line of volcanoes from Japan on down the Philippines and Indonesia, that was the way of destruction. Like, there's a lot of disaster and destruction over there. And he said that mankind shouldn't live over there. Those are the winds of destruction. I believe Australia has it the worst. They're at the corner of all 3 winds of destruction. But it specifically says, like, this is an area of destruction, and they chose to live there anyway. So they know that it shakes all the time. Their streets are coming apart, liquefaction's happening, giant things of water are just coming up, and people are still not emigrating or moving anywhere else. They're sticking to it. And so the earthquakes and the tsunamis are getting bigger and bigger, and they still haven't fixed the Fukushima yet. Like, that plant is still not, that containment is still not happened. It's terrifying when you really think about it. But that was a 9.0 earthquake that did that. And that's important when you see something like that. Makes me curious, and I go look into it to see the meaning behind it. So anyway, it was a 9.3 that hit in Indonesia in the Indian Ocean. And when I looked into it, look at all the holy numbers of that basic language, the 3, 6, 9, and 7 that's here. Okay, a 9.3 earthquake hit. It hit 66 kilometers away from shore. So I'm like, okay, that's a lot of mankind. 24 kilometers deep into the earth. Well, that's 12 times 12. It's 24 is a division of 3, right? It's 3 times 8. From what I can tell, the Lord's not happy with 8. I'm not even sure if music should be to 8 beats, to be honest. Like, if you look at a lot of the cultures that are deeply socialist and communist, that have the most murders, that do the most heinous things, they love the number 8. They worship the number 8. And I'll get into why that's not a great thing later. Not that the Lord doesn't own 8. Not that the Lord doesn't do beautiful things with music and 8 counts and things like that. But it's the Lord's number. It's not Satan's number. Satan loves to take those 7s and add to it and make it 8. So there's a lot of even evil customs that are built around 8. And the same thing goes for the number 4, because it's 3 plus 1, and that's the whole thing. Anyway, 24 to me is always like 12 and 12, but that's definitely a holy number. There's the 12. 1,200 kilometers of ocean floor shifted, causing a tsunami with a 66-foot wave. Went 3 kilometers inland. It took 7 hours to get there to be done. 300,000 died. 37,000 are missing, 14 nations, which is 7 times 7, and 9.9 billion in losses. So 14 nations at 9.9 billion in losses. I looked at this and I was like, that 2004 tsunami had the Lord all over it. So I decided to look into it. And guess what I found out? It happened on Boxing Day. And Boxing Day is when you give your servants, after you've done colonizing, you give the people that you've enslaved, you give them Christmas presents on the day after Christmas. And I was like, what? And I found out a ton, like Britain and Europe, they just flood the areas that were hit on those shores. It's all tourist industries for all these aristocrats and families. That's where they go to vacation. And that's, I mean, it's just fascinating. I could go on and on into it. But my point is when you see something like this, 3, 6, 9 in the first two, and then 24 is a division of 3, 12 is a division of 3, 66 is basics 3, 7, 3, 3, 7, 14, 9, 9. Then you start to know that God's not happy and it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. And it has, by the way. When something bad like this happens, they don't like to tell everybody it's getting worse. So hold on very, very quick. All right, I'm back. So my point is that, okay, that it made me take another look at the 2004 tsunami, and I found out about Boxing Day, and other bad things have happened on Boxing Day. People think, oh, Boxing Day is so cool. No. Why can't your servants or whoever's working for you get Christmas presents on the day? Like on the day. It's quite shocking that it's still happening. But I've learned that the Death Eaters and Satan's Fallen, they'll go after the ones who would, like the people who would give anyone who worked for them or their employees gifts on that day or before that day. Those are the places attacked the most by demons. Like those are the places that get the most calls from scam baiters, from scammers, and from, it's just incredible, or for terrorist attacks. It's very interesting to see how hard those places are attacked. Anyway, so this is another one I wanted to show you. So, if you look on your phone or whatever it is on your screen, I'm going to show you this one. And the thing that got me interested in Croatia and looking at holy numbers and paying attention at all is because I noticed Hawaii. Hawaii was on everybody's radar, and I noticed that it kept hitting holy numbers. Like it would hit 663 feet deep, then skip to 666. And then after that, like I thought, it went to 669. It just jumped and it would stop. It would stop moving. The lava lake would be filled. It would stop moving. All of a sudden, for example, it was growing at like 3 feet a day. And then on inauguration day, it just stopped. And then after inauguration day, boom, 669. And I was like, what is going on? And I was like, maybe I should be paying attention to these 3, 6, and 9s, because like the actual volcanoes are actually, like the volcanoes are going according to these numbers. Like 8 never came in, 2 never came in, 4 never came in. And that's when I started paying attention to it. Croatia's earthquake came across my desk or my phone, and I was like, maybe I should go see what's there, because I don't know anything about Croatia. And boy, did I uncover in a huge nest. And so that's before I was even able to translate it. But I was able to like notice all these things with the earthquakes hitting at exactly 12 noon. All these things, I was able to see certain events coming, like that happened with the sun in September 2021. And my point is that it's a beautiful way for the Lord to speak directly to you, to know about 3, 6, 9, 12. Look at our calendar month. Like the Lord wrote it out so that we have 12 months a year, 30 days each, right? 4 seasons, right? So that's already, each season is 3 months. So that's 3 right there. Each season is 3 months. 3, that's 4. 4 is the 4 corners. For 12 total, that's 12. That means that's the Lord. Then right in the middle of all, there are 5 intercalaries days, and 5 means the hand of God, like the right hand of God. And so you have the calendar nestled amongst the 5. Holding the calendar together is the hand of God. 5 days. It starts off with a day of spring on March 18th, or March 19th is the day of spring. March 20th is the day of the new year. March 21st is the first calendar day, so it's the first day of the first month and the first day of spring. Then there are 3 months, exactly 90 days. Then on after 90 days, then there's the day of, day of summer. The day of summer happens. Then June, like it's in the middle of June, I believe. June, day of summer happens. There's another 3 months, 90 days. Then there's the day of fall that happens. Then September, that's on September 18th. No, September 18th is the day of fall. So that's an intercalary day. So on September 19th, which is when La Palma erupted exactly on September 19th. And everybody was like, they didn't see it. There were just earthquakes before on September 18th, the day of fall, which lets you know that, volcanoes are going to be a big thing. And they were. So that was 3 months again in the fall. La Palma erupted in the Canary Islands for exactly 3 months. And then on December 18th, that was the day of winter, an intercalary day. And on December 19th, Hunga Tonga Ha'apai erupted to 50,000 feet and didn't stop erupting until it just went crazy on the second month of winter in the middle of the 30 days. It just blasted off, and it did 3 big blasts on the 14th, 15th, and 18th. And then on the 17th, they're like, we can't monitor it. Everything that we have to monitor what the volcano is doing has been blasted out. It's all been destroyed. So they couldn't say what was happening. What we know is the earthquakes kept going. So we don't even know if eruptions happen. Everyone lost their internet. They all lost their satellite connections. And then the big worry just became, do we have water for everybody? And so all international efforts were engaged in just getting water, to the point that they couldn't even report on Hunga Tonga Ha'apai's eruption until literally Thanksgiving week of 2022. So that took 9 months, 11 months for them to be able to actually report on it, or 10 months. Yeah, 10 months to the day they were actually able to come together and do a report on it. And that's interesting because the number 10, it's the 10th day that Noah began loading the ark. And on the 17th day of the second month, that's when the rain began to fall for the flood judgment. And that's when Adam and Eve ate the apple. So the human fall was on the 17th of the second month, and so was the flood judgment. That's not a coincidence, on the 17th day of the second month. Not good at all. So that falls on May 6th, by the way, the 17th. That falls on May 6th. Anyway, so if you have the calendar, you'll learn how big this 3, 6, 9, 7, 7 days a week, 7-day feast all throughout the 12 months. It's so big. 3, 6, 9, 7, 12. Honestly, you really need to just know 3 and the things it multiplies into, and 7. 3 and 7 are big. So, yeah, those are the language of the Lord. Very easy, unlocks the universe. So if you start to see headlines, or you see, that's why a lot of times they change it. Like if it's in a government where they definitely, they worship fallen idols, like they worship idols and they do a lot of the old devil worship. It's come back after the millennium of Christ. Devil worship has returned, and voodoo, they'll go, like, for example, perfect example, Africa has a ton of voodoo and they publicly put out their demons and are like, here, watch what our demons do. Watch us sacrifice and kill a bunch of things and put the body parts to this demon so that it'll dance for us. And it's like they celebrate it and they put it online stupidly. It's ridiculous to see all the blood that they shed just to get these things dancing in hula skirts. Well, guess what? Africa has no warning on any of the eruptions that happen. When Goma went off, they gave Africa something like 3 million, 1.2 million, millions of dollars to monitor their earthquakes. And it just gets stolen. The people they hijack it. There's so much corruption there that the money's stolen, that there are no public records of earthquakes over there. And Africa might be the most important continent because there's a giant amount of lava. There's a massive lava plume, this giant tree of lava rising up in the middle of Africa. It's very important to know what the heck is happening there. It smells like sulfur all along its southwestern shores down there. And it's all smelling like sulfur. There's so much volcano activity and coming up to the surface in the water there. Africa is this giant volcano just waiting it has all these lava lakes in it and everything. So when that Jesus said something like, you'll be thrown into the lake of fire, nobody was like, what's the lake of fire? The lake of fire is one of the lava lakes. There's like 2 lava lakes within distance of travel with Israel at the time. So Anyway, so 3, 6, 9, know what they are. 3 means the Lord, 6 means mankind, 7 means creation, 4 means the four corners of the world, 10 means destruction, like preparing for destruction. 17 is the day of destruction, so it's not a good sign. 17 began showing up at a certain time. It really helped me see some things coming. So just those are the building blocks. 24. You want to know what 24 is so symbolic of? Well, let me give you one. So 12 is 12 covenant, like there's the covenant with the Israelites, the 12. So there's the 12 tribes. And then there's also the 12 tribes of Israel. They were chosen to give birth to the Messiah, and they did. They gave their bloodline led to the Messiah, and the Messiah rules forever. So they have a king that rules forever. And then there's the covenant with the apostles of the Holy Spirit. So the 12 apostles would have a long life according to scripture. And if you listen to what Jesus said, they're still living today. Plenty of characters in the Bible, people in the past have lived for a long life. Look at Adam and Eve. They lived for millions of years on the tree of life, millions of years before they fell. So anyway, okay, I hope that helps you out. I hope that helps you see certain things and draws your attention to certain things and helps you dig into stuff, because the liar is out there. Like, the shadow has never been stronger. Just yesterday, all the flights were grounded in the USA, and I think even further than that. I think it's because the sun went into a giant C flare that just flared into the M class. That's a level 3. There's only 5 levels for flares, and it was like for, 36 hours, which is 12 times 3. For 36 hours, it just stayed at a high level 3 and into the level 4 for just like 36 hours. It just kept going. And it affected, there are a ton of X-ray blacks. It's just, the sun had a lot of activity. And so all the planes were grounded. Well, planes were a gift during the millennium of Christ. Like, it was people who followed Jesus that discovered, plane flight. And it's a real reminder that flying a plane is not a right. We didn't come up with it. The Lord came up with it. I've been to the Wright Brothers Memorial. I've seen what was done in order to fly. I've seen what it took. And that is the Lord. Like, that's the stuff that Jesus helps me out with. That when I'm stuck, I can't figure it out. Do you know what happened with the Wright brothers? Do you know how flying? A ton of people were trying to fly around the world. Everybody was like, we believe we can fly. We think we can do it. The Industrial Revolution had happened. Like, steam engines had been created. The car was well on its way. Trains were, they were like, I'm sure we can fly. Like, we just have this feeling. Well, it turned out that the math books were wrong. That's why no one could do it. No one could get off the ground for any sustained amount of time. And so the Wright brothers, who took every Sunday off as a Sabbath, the Wright brothers went ahead and went to their bike shop, and they built a new wind tunnel, and they measured the calculations of lift and trash, this whole thing. They did all these experiments to see if the math was right. And it turned out the math books were completely wrong. And that's what was holding everyone back. So who do you think that, do any of you ever question your books and go, well, maybe that math isn't correct? Maybe people today do that more, but it's not usually as correct. Like, usually people question things to a little extent, but not to that extent, not back then. And definitely people don't go into their yards very often and just redesign anything, not without their parents' help or another book or another kid or somebody else giving. These two were on their own. And the only thing they had was the Lord. They were going down to Kitty Hawk where it was windy, doing it in secret. They were very insistent on doing it, the two of them alone. The difference is that they believed in the Lord. They did very, very funny things. They used to make their own newspaper. They made up aliases, just like Thomas Jefferson did. And Ben Franklin loved to do that. He did a lot of writing under other names. And kind of like we do today, like with Twitter, we all have our own screen names or whatever. These guys did it early on and wrote all sorts of things. They had a lot of joy in their lives, but we tend to forget that, you read their journals. If you go to Kitty Hawk and read, which is hard to do now, most of it's underwater because there's a lot of other stuff that happens over there. There is a ton of human sin over there. It's horrific, some of the things that are being done over there in that bay over by the Outer Banks. So there's a when places are flooded, it means there are things that are going on there that I wouldn't recommend going to any place. I just looked for the 12 gates, which brings me back to the number 24. So what is 20? So 24 means a number of things. One of it is the covenants that the Lord made with humanity. So there's the covenant with the Israelites, and then the covenant with the apostles and the Gentiles. So he made a covenant with the Israelites and he made a covenant with the Gentiles before and after Christ. So Christ finished up the first covenant, the second covenant. Now the Jews, of course, can be blessed if they actually follow the laws that are in the Bible. And Moses, if you read the book of Deuteronomy, which is really the revelation of Moses, holy smokes, like the Lord is he has all these songs that they're supposed to keep on singing, the children of Israel, the 12 tribes, and the slaves that left Egypt. They're very strict if they don't keep exactly the Jubilees, if they don't do exactly the Sabbath, and if they don't do all the laws that are in there, which they don't even celebrate the right New Year. They celebrate Yom Kippur as the year. That's the Egyptian New Year. So the Lord was very clear in Deuteronomy. He's like, I'll curse you, which Deuteronomy is in the Torah, so they know about it. They just don't like to actually read their Torahs. They, like many of us, we put people above us, and we let them read our books. You know, you can go to I went to Catholic Church until I was 18. They had a Bible in the pew, and I didn't break open the Bible once. I even became born again, like at 15 or 16 or whatever. And I saw the Bible, so I started noticing there's a Bible there, and we never open it, And we just let the priest read it to us or whatever, and we let the lecterns read it to us or whatever. We do the same thing in Islam. We do the same thing in Buddhism. We don't actually get into it ourselves. And that's what's going to happen at Judgment Day. They're going to say, well, did you reach down and look into it yourself? Of course, the Bible was a creation of Rome. They're very proud of it. It cut out women. It cut out so many things. But still, they added chapters to Deuteronomy. Jesus says it. He's like, you're rewriting history. It's all wrong, and you look like fools. Why would Jesus say they look like fools? Because we are not alone. Newsflash, we are not alone. There are angels and demons and Nephilim all around us. You know, the sun is an angel. He's watching us. The moon is an angel. We have two angels that watch over us, you know, morning and night. That's why, you know, the sun, it is so... There's a reason that flowers open. There's a reason that when an egg is fertilized, it actually begins to grow and becomes this whole other thing. There are angels that actually do that. Like in the books, it says that if you're infertile, like there's a reason for that. That can be judgment. I think there's a reason why so many of us are infertile around the world today. Infertility is at like a massive, massive high, and so are birth defects from all of our chemicals. I'm getting way off of holy numbers. So anyway, 3, 6, 9, 7, and 12. What does 24 mean? Well, it can mean the covenants with humanity, the Israelites before Christ, and the Gentiles after Christ. That can be that. It's also the four corners. It's Lord to the four corners. So it's like our map of earth, the four corners of earth. So that map, it could be that 12. And then there's another 12, which is the constellations in the heavens, which the Lord made. The Lord put watchers above us. We have 12 watchers. And as you can tell, when you look at the constellations and what they mean, you can tell which ones have fallen. Like Scorpio, definitely a fallen angel. Not good. Not good to, you know, don't want to have any dealings with that fallen angel, one of the Lord's, you know, one of the angels that fell. But like Virgo, the Lord went ahead and put the Virgo, the lady of light, the woman of light, at the center of Revelations. Like definitely not one that's fallen, not an angel that's fallen, one that serves the Lord. So he put the 12 constellations up there in the watchers. So the 12 is like the four corners of heaven. So when you see 24, it can mean the two covenants with humanity before and after Christ. That can mark that can be 24. 24 can also be the four corners of earth and the four corners of heaven. And then there's also the 24 of the New Jerusalem, which is the New Jerusalem has 12 stones. It has the covenant of the apostles of the Gentiles as the basis for the New Jerusalem. So the New Jerusalem is going to be built on humans, right, that work with the Holy Spirit from the blessings of the apostle in Jesus. So those who follow Jesus, there will be those who follow Jesus that are the foundation of the New Jerusalem. But the gates to get through it, which is the Messiah, will be the 12 tribes of Israel, which is the genetic marker of the Messiah. So the gates to get through are pearly gates, and there's 3 on each side, so that the actual gates come in sets of 3, which declares the name of the Lord, right? So the city is supposed to be a square, which is the four corners. Anyway, so the 24 can also mean the New Jerusalem. Everything that's in Revelations has happened. From what I can see, we're on chapter 22. That's what the signs seem to symbolize. That's the other reason why 13 seems to be evil, is because it's 12 plus 1. The Lord did 12 covenants, four corners of heaven, 12 constellations, 12 portals, 12 winds for the earth. And then Satan goes and does 13. Like, he added Paul the apostle, the fake apostle, the 13th apostle. Well, there is no 13th apostle. So Satan loves to take he has 8 feasts in his Samhain year. They have 8 feasts instead of the 7 feasts the Lord laid out. So Satan likes to add on one just to knife it in so that they get the blessing of the 7 feasts, but then he adds one in to twist it. And so that's why 13 is bad luck, and that's why 8 is not a great number to worship. It's a sign of not great things. But it doesn't mean the Lord isn't in control of all of them. They still tell us, they still speak to us in tremendous ways. So it is a way for him to reach you that bypasses that any one of us can read, any language of us can read. And the sign that it's his language is that, from what I can tell, math is the most diverse of all academics. All studies of math is to study the Lord's language. The whole universe. Perfect example. Do you see the picture that I used for this, the Lost Laws of Lords, part 3? I specifically chose fractal art. Fractals is based on math, and so that's a fractal artistic piece. I try to find other pieces, and no photo, no graphic was more beautiful than a fractal. So the Lord's math are the laws. That's another type. Mathematics is another type of law. Just like there are physics, there are laws of physics. There's moral laws. There's the law of the Lord, the law of ethics. And there's the law of math. There's law of numbers. And 3 is the number of the Lord. 6 is the number of man. 7 is the number of creation. 9 is the Lord's completion and plan and finality and the end. And 12 is a number of things. It usually means everything. So, like, it can mean the Israelites. It can mean the Holy Spirit and the apostles and the Gentiles that follow Jesus. It can mean the New Jerusalem. It can mean the 4 corners of earth and the 4 corners of heaven. It can have several meanings, but the way I've seen it used more than anything is the way that it's described. And it seems to always relate back to Revelations, which is specifically written. It's just very, very interesting. I could go on and on and on. By the way, I want to make this one point. So the Lord uses both calendars. Our calendar may be off, but he knows that not all of us know his calendar. So he speaks in both calendars. For example, the fireballs, he did that on 3/3/21. Over Sakurajima. That's not an accident. 3/3/21. So that's the Lord, and the Lord can mean mankind. The Lord, 21 is 3 times 7. That's the Lord times creation. So that's 3 3s and a 7 that happened with that fireball. 3 3s. That means Lord's completion of 3 3s is finality, and 7 is creation. So that fireball meant, like, the Lord's plan is going to come to completion at this volcano. You guys, the more and more I'm looking at all the data and all the numbers, it really looks like we're going to have a period where all the volcanoes go off at once. Not all of them, but there's going to be an event where it's not just one volcano going off. I mean, look into contractions, look into conceiving a baby. The earth is definitely in contractions. It's in labor to bring the birth of Christ and bring Jesus back. We know the new Elijah is here because of 2017, because Jupiter went through the womb of Virgo and did it in 9 months, gave birth to Jupiter, who is the chief. He's the symbol of Messiah. The sun is the symbol of the Father. And then Jupiter is the symbol of the Son, of Jesus, is the Messiah. And then, I don't know, I'd have to look into it and see what the Holy Spirit is represented by. I'd be interested to see. That would be interesting to see. Perhaps the Milky Way is supposed to be the Lord. Maybe the Milky Way is the Holy Spirit. I mean, it does kind of go across like a spirit across our skies, doesn't it? So, I'm dropping things. I'm very tired. I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. I hope that helped you out. 3, 6, 9, 7, 12. When you see those numbers and their multiples, definitely start paying attention. When you get into more, like, definitely the number 30, you can look up what certain numbers are. Like, they have some sites that say that there's Hebrew numerology or this or that. And sometimes the Lord uses what they say, but a lot of it you can tell that they weren't talking to the Lord when they wrote it. Like, a lot of it isn't the Lord inspired. They're just trying. And a lot of it refers to Paul, who's a false prophet. He has 13 books in the New Testament. There's a reason for that. 13, that's a sign. It's not good. And there's 66 books in the Bible. There's a reason for that, because it's written by man. It's man from front, man to back. The Old Testament was written by man. The New Testament was written by man. So it's very, very, you really have to look outside. The Lord gave us signs in the numbers to look outside the Bible. It is something that, the Roman church put together. Priests, just like the priests and holy men today, are no different than the priests and holy men of yesteryear, of the ones that Jesus yelled at. He yelled at the religious fanatics more than anyone else. Jesus is not into a lot of rules and regulations. He says to feast, to banquet on the Lord. That's what gets me through my day. I banquet on the Lord. I honestly, like, when I'm at home, I have 3 cats. I think that I have 3 cats for a reason. We didn't aim for 3 cats. My doctors told me to get cats. I went ahead and get cats. They're supposed to protect you from the underworld. Did I know that at the time? No. Did I know I was going to get 3? No. We couldn't decide when we knew we needed to get a cat for Tiberius. That's a whole separate thing. But, he knew that was going to happen. When I'm alone and it's just me and the cats for most of the day, when my husband is off doing a lot of work, because the world is rapidly changing, and so he's at work a lot. So we're blessed that he's, working, but as most of us know, if we still have a job after COVID, it's become much, much, much harder. I mean, the shadow has taken the world just as it said it would. There's a great war going on. I feel like the skies look like we're in the middle of a Harry Potter novel constantly. It's very easy to write on my other Twitter page, my Prophets Journal, which is the Book of Catherine movies. It's that world. I write about it every day. Very easy to write that. Sometimes I feel like the world looks more like the one on my Prophets Journal than on my fiction feed than on my reality feed. I feel like the edges are blurring now. We're seeing a lot of things that we see in video games and stuff actually happening in our outside world. Anyway, so a lot of apocalyptic things, and hopefully this will help you navigate through the world with 3, 6, 7, 9, knowing the basic alphabet of the Lord and what they mean. And I really hope it helps. And let me ask if, so banqueting on, like feasting on the Lord, what does that look like? Well, like, I'm to the point now, I've been in so much pain that I'm on my phone and all I'm doing is looking at certain pictures or photos. And I've really gotten in the habit of just like asking him where to go. It's very much like Jesus described to Nicodemus, which is to flow with the Spirit. He says that you'll know a person by the way that you won't know when they're coming and you won't know when they're going. Like, I remember that when I started my YouTube channel, I was like, I'm going to be so structured. I'm going to be so structured. I'm going to do it 3 times a week and I'm going to get this out. I'm going to get this out. And I worked so hard. And I remember being so devastated when I got too sick to do that. Oh, I'm going to cry. So when I got too sick to do that, and then slowly but surely, I noticed that, well, I get healthy and then all of a sudden post on a certain day or at a certain time, and it would have holy numbers all over it. And it would hit at just the right time, or somebody would email me. And I started seeing that was better. That was much, much better. And it's safer for those of us to avoid the wolf. And I realized that I'm still being watched over, and it is not the Lord who's telling us to post 3 days a week. That's the liar. The Lord says that the sign of one who is born again and born of the Spirit is one who's like the wind, because they're following the wind of the Spirit. I was talking with a friend of mine that has a similar life to mine, and they call it the breath of God. Like, they like to go with the breath of God and follow wherever he blows day by day. And I don't. I see it more like a river. Like, I'm on a river and I'm just going where the river takes me. But both of us are just kind of checking into the Spirit, and we like taking that train. We like getting on that ride because we get to see everything. Perfect example is that road trip that we took. We went on all these branches, and we never would have uncovered what he revealed to us there. He took us to, I can't even describe all the little corners, little cafes, little natural things, little things that people think are normal that were just miraculous to us because we had been so sheltered living in, California, where they tell you the whole world is like California. It's not. You just go across the border into another state, and for very long you realize this is actually different. You look at the news channel and it's very different. I think they've changed that since the elections. I think the news is much more like a state news and one voice. But perfect example is when we were in California. Whatever. I'll get into that later, but there's just a really big natural disaster happening in California. They reported it on one day, and then they went back to talking about bears invading somebody's yard. When we left the state, the other states were all focusing on the natural disaster and talking about the life and damage and fixing, and people were genuinely interested. And we thought it was over because we lived in California, where they want us to just constantly buy. Buying is you don't go on a hike in California. What you do is you buy. That's the whole thing. The sport in California is it's 4 seasons. Keep buying. We're going to put all these stores and just drive to work and then drive and spend your paycheck. Drive to work and then drive. And here's all the glorious things you can spend your paycheck on, and that's why theft is so big there. There's so much to steal in California. It's so easy. There's just so much there. So anyway, so feasting on God is just, even though I'm in pain, he shows me all these places to go out there online in the world that make me distracted from the pain. And I've discovered these beautiful things. I didn't know anything about volcanoes before. I didn't know anything about the calendar of the Lord before. I didn't know anything about the Dead Sea Scrolls. I didn't know about the Book of the Cave of Treasures. But even more so, that was more later on. I didn't know that we were in a one-party system in America. I thought there were Republicans and Democrats, and there aren't. They vote as one body, and it's very clever the way they vote, and all the voting recorders, all those sites have been wiped off the internet so that everybody pays attention to what people say. And every senator, they go out there and say one thing and they vote a totally different way. Their votes have nothing to do with the things they say. So it's very communist, the government that we have. It's very socialist, and I know so much more, and it's been such an adventure. So I feel like I feast on God every day. And not only that, but I have a chosen family outside of the one that I grew up with, where we all like to talk about what we did with the Lord that day. I mean, that's our conversation. Every, lunch and night, we talk about what we discovered following the Father. And it's been tremendous. It does feel like a feast every time. We can eat crackers and still feel like we're feasting, because it's much, much different when you're following the Father. His yoke really is easy and his burden really is light. I grew up Catholic, and I can tell you, I just felt like not just crap about myself. I didn't feel cared for. I was just abused in that church. That's all it was. I was kind of a victim there. And with the Father, I'm not. I'm a dearly, dearly, dearly loved child. I'm learning what love looks like. I'm learning who I am. I thought I was all these things because I went to school. And now I know that school is more like a prison camp. I understand that, and that it was abuse to be in these schools that we have for our children, when they should be out there and also living with the Lord and walking with the Lord. And it's very interesting to me, all they've shown every day, so that I'm able to be grateful every day instead of just being in an episode. I was in an episode all morning, and here I am able to talk to you now. Yes, it's scatterbrained, but I have learned that he can use, no matter what I do, he'll use it for my best. The wind comes very strong, and suddenly I'm able to speak, and then the wind dies away, and then I go and I rest, and it just feels like banqueting every day. And I feel very grateful that he gives me numbers. I'm so glad that I see numbers now. I think things where there are numbers for angels, I don't know anything about that. I've never done astrology. I've always avoided it. I didn't learn any astrology when I was as a Catholic kid. Some of the nuns try to teach me things like being a portal yourself and pulling other gods into you. I would highly recommend never doing that. That is demonology. Never pull anything else into you. You should never pull another angel. Usually those are fallen angels or demons or Nephilim. And once they go into you, they're not going out. It'll take it, and a tremendous thing to take it out of you. But anyway, so just start paying attention. It's the 12 apostles. That was not on accident, just like the 12, the 12 tribes is Israel, not an accident. 13th floor, there's a reason that America, they didn't build it with the 13th floor. They avoided that number. So just, it's good to know the alphabet. It's good to know the alphabet of our world. And also the Jubilees in Leviticus 25. It's really important to know all of those numbers. It's just kind of the foundation of creation. They're so important to know. And the Lord does speak to us directly, even in our own lives. It doesn't mean that just if you see a 3, it doesn't mean it's automatically his, but it is something to pause and look into it. If there's more there, keep looking into it. Does that make sense? Like today, I dug in when I saw the 3-3 and I was like, ooh, let me look into fireballs. That's how I found out about Britain. Britain had a massive fireball that only was seen in Britain. Like that's when it's the Lord. When Ireland doesn't see it, Scotland doesn't see it, one person reports it off across the channel. And there's just the most I've ever seen reports all over southern Britain and just England. This massive, London had the most. London hardly ever reports. It's very interesting to see. And I'm like, well, then that's a fireball just for you guys. And that means something coming. There's a fireball before they had temperatures over 100 degrees, which was a record. That's always a sign. I've just learned. And so, yeah, I got to banquet on the Lord today. He took me one place. I followed his numbers. I got to discover something else. And then when my husband comes home, I have so much to talk to everyone about. Oh gosh, am I at an hour? I'm at an hour and 5 minutes. Can you guys believe that? I told you that I was going to tell you something very quickly. And I didn't do it very quickly. I went for an hour. So anyway, so 3 means the Lord, means the Holy Trinity. 6 means mankind because we were created on the 6th day. 7 means all of creation, like everything, all the 12s, all of it. 9 means completion and finality, and his plan is part of his plan. 10 means the day they started loading the ark. It can mean, drama, like something's coming, be tense, like it's not a good thing. Like if 5 is the hand of God, then 10 is 2 hands. That means the Lord's putting both of his hands into it. It means, not necessarily a good thing. 12 is 3 times 4, the Lord times the 4 corners. So that can be the 4 corners of earth, the 4 corners of heaven, the covenants. And 24, 12 times 2, is the New Jerusalem, which is, by the way, the pearly gates, they're described just like portals. And if you read the book of Enoch, it says all the winds come through portals. I mean, the Lord talks about portals all the time. So these pearly gates are not supposed to be gates like we do with metal and write them. Also, by the way, Enoch has a very interesting thing in the book of remembrance. They have this thing, it talks about which angels fell in there. It's very interesting. Remember how I said that the mining companies of BASF in Germany, it was mining companies who started World War I and World War II. Yeah, it turns out that the angels that fell, they're all like the angels of copper, the angels of iron, the angel of steel, the angel of all of these different resources and rocks and all the kind of everything everyone mines. Those were the angels that fell. And that's very interesting to me because it makes sense because, in Ezekiel 28, Satan's described, like I think halfway through it starts talking about the Lord mourning Satan's fall because Satan was so beautiful and he was most treasured. He was the Lord's favorite angel. And he had this chest plate of gold with all these stones in it of all these rainbow colors. And Satan just loved stones. So it makes sense that his followers would just mine the earth for more and more stones and own all the diamonds and own all the golds. And that would be what would be evil because the fallen angels are all in the mining industry. I thought that was very, very interesting. I think it even said something like the angel of oil, which I thought was fascinating. So anyway, these other books are very, very helpful. They're very, very necessary. And I don't know what else to tell you about numbers. No, I think just start with that. Start there with the basics with 3, 6, 9. Tesla already caught it. Just add 7. Just add 7 into it. And one number I'm seeing all the time is 5. Like they come in flows. Certain numbers start repeating. They come in certain, like 21 was just all over the place back in January before the 7,000th. If I can't say 7,000th, then it's time to go. Like I think I just gave my hip a new little seizures just saying that word. So I'm going to go. I love you guys so much, and be well, be blessed. May you hear the Lord speak to you, and sorry about that, guys. I got cut off. I just want to say that please listen to the Father. There's lies in every single corner now, and the days have grown darker and darker. But there's a way out. That's what salvation means. It's not what we're told by all these evil humans and people who say they're better than the rest of us. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye. Love. All right. There's a new movie coming, I believe, Valentine's Day. I think it's Book of Catherine and the Mormon Star. A friend was worried that you guys would think that that means Mormonism is good. No. I mean, obviously there are good Mormons, but it's another religious with a lot of laws, right? That's the Lord's yoke is easy and light, and he never went and did a lot of synagogues. I mean, read just what Jesus says, read Enoch. I mean, that is not, Enoch wasn't part of any religion. It's not the way that it works. And they've had videos go into those temples. It steals a lot from Enoch. It steals a lot from the way heaven is, but it doesn't mean that it is heaven. That can only be found between you and the Father, just the two of you, and let him father you.